On behalf of Emily McCloud and myself, Davis May, welcome to our presentation for the Lead Innovators Committee. We identified engagement and choice early on as being an issue with our Algebra 2 students, and in the following video, you'll see some of our proposed solutions. But I should be open and honest and let you know that not everything presented in this video worked as planned, and engagement and choice definitely remain to be an issue at the end of the year. So as I said, our problem as presented is we recognized early on that students weren't as engaged as they could be. They weren't participating in lessons. They weren't necessarily completing the assignments we gave them. And so our solution ended up being, we attempted to provide students with a variety of activities, different ways of showing us what they learned, in the hopes that they would become more engaged and show a little more interest in the topic at hand. To facilitate this, we applied early on for a mini grant from the PTSA, and were awarded a sum of money to purchase some of these activities from an online website from which we modified for our own purposes. So some of those activities include, we had some activities that were drag and drop activities. And so this one provided answers up front, and students were to work through a process called synthetic division. And they were to not only complete these problems by substituting numbers in for the zeros, but they could also go back to this answer slide and they could cut and paste these answers from one slide to the other. And while it wasn't self-checking, let me make sure I got it. Yep, I did. While it wasn't self-checking the fact that there were only 6 possible answers on the first slide, if they got one of those, it pretty much told them whether they were on the right track or not. One other type of activity that we did, this one was kind of fun. If you remember Mad Libs as a kid, I know I played them in my car with my sister. Mad Libs had a book and it had a story, and it asked you for verbs and adverbs and nouns and things like that, and you made funny stories out of it. So the same idea here, these were multiple choice problems. This focused on long division. And at the end, students submitted their story, getting to the end here, submitted their story as their answer, and we could easily check that through Google Forms. Another type of activity we did, this is one of my personal favorites. This is called pixel art. For you Facebookers out there, there's a Facebook dedicated strictly to pixel art. You can find all sorts of stuff, not just from the math classroom, but across the curriculum. And the way this one worked, this one was self-checking. I know the answer to this one was B, so I'm going to go ahead and put the wrong answer in for now. And if I put A in here, the cell turned red to let me know that it was wrong. And so I'd go back and do my work again, and the correct answer is actually B. Not only does the cell turn green, but part of the picture on the right begins to color. I did this one earlier. I think the answer here is I. The cell turns green, but it starts to color the picture. So it's kind of like not only a self-checking, but it makes a nice pretty picture for you at the end. And I believe that's the end of my 3 examples. I'm going to let Emily take it from here.
The other thing we tried this year was providing the students with more choice. One of the ways we did that was with our test reviews. We created self-paced paired X where the students were given an overview of all the topics that we had done that unit, and we gave some examples. We worked through the samples, and you'll notice on each slide we also included some videos that the teachers on our team made to walk students through the examples as well. So we chose to provide these self-paced reviews because then students could identify which topics they needed to study the most and start with those. And it also allowed them to work at their own pace and repeat as many review as they needed. And at the end, we always provided our answer key so that students could check their work and work with the teacher as needed. Another example of choice we provided was choice boards. This worked really well with the electronic virtual platform because we could just hyperlink everything. So this is an example of a choice board we used at the end of a unit. So we offered different types of activities that the students could use to review. Some of them a little more interactive than others, so it gave students a choice based on what kind of task they were looking for. And then the last space that we tried to provide choice was doing practice. We set up breakout groups for students to go to. So after doing some work as a whole class, we would assign a practice activity and open up breakout groups. So this slide is showing an example of how we set up some of those breakout groups. So sometimes it was just spaces for students to go, whether they wanted to work alone, with a partner, or with a teacher. But sometimes we also scaffolded in kind of like a self-check on how they were feeling. So maybe they felt comfortable with the topic and want to work on their own, or they're feeling okay, but they want to work with a partner. So that kind of allowed us to see not just the choice of work that they were choosing, but also how they were feeling at the end of the class. So after trying choice and interactive activities this year, when we think about next year, the first thing we want to figure out is how to incorporate the fun interactive activities we have found in the virtual platform when we are all back in the classroom next year. The other thing we would like to consider is how to maintain this choice that we've provided for students, but perhaps figure out ways to expand the choice beyond just choices of how students will complete work, but perhaps trying to find ways to give them a choice of the content and how they're connecting these math concepts to examples in the real world.